became clear yesterday that in addition to that test, Special Agent Johnson also evaluated the computers to determine, or evaluated at the very least, the IBM ThinkPad to determine whether or not a phone call had been automated using that computer at 6:40 in the morning on July 12th. And it was his testimony that he did in fact check that machine and that there was no evidence whatsoever of the phone call being automated through that machine. That is yet another test that we knew nothing about and is clearly exculpatory. The court's order with respect to the question of details of any opinion that was sought or received as to what entries one would expect to find if the IBM ThinkPad had been used to initiate a telephone call at either 6:05 or 6:40 on July 12th and underlying data, that was deferred while the state seeks answer. That was not subject to any national security provision, and they didn't ask for that. They said that they were going to get an answer to that question, and we never got one until Special Agent Johnson testified from that witness stand.
And he said that there was no evidence.
He said that he did look and that there was no evidence, which by definition would be exculpatory information. You are aware that the telephones in the Cooper household were standard landline. Is that correct?
At which time was I aware?
You're aware right now as you sit here that on July 12th, the home phone number attached to the Cooper household was a landline telephone.
Yes, sir.
And your understanding is there was no speed dial or call forwarding set up on that phone.
Objection, Your Honor? Sustained. Your Honor, I'd ask that there to be an instruction to the jury.
Your Honor, I'd ask to be heard before we go there. And we're talking about the telephone in the Cooper household, the main standard home phone line in the Cooper household on July 12th. At that time, there was no speed dialing or call forwarding set up in that home. Is that correct?
I know that I spoke with someone from Time Warner Cable that services that particular phone line at the residential number of 854-1511. Do you see a number in the bottom right-hand corner of my handwritten notes?
86.
Thank you. And on August the 19th at 5 p.m., I do have a note that says no speed dialing or call forwarding on July 12th at Cooper phone.
And part of your duties in investigating this case was to investigate whether or not Brad Cooper would be able to make it appear that a call had been generated on his home phone.
I completed interviews surrounding Brad Cooper's knowledge of phone systems, and as part of that, questions and answers were received about that topic.
So part of your investigation was to determine whether or not Brad could make it appear as if a phone call had been generated from the home phone when it had in fact not.
Yes, sir.
Detective, do you have the emails that you sent back and forth with Paul Geralt, or actually with Roxanne Marenberg from Cisco?
No, sir. I do not have that particular email with me.
Do you recall asking Cisco if the regular home telephone could be automated to make a phone call?
No, sir, but I would definitely refer to my notes.
Do you recall having communications with Paul Geralt at Cisco?
Yes, sir, I do. Through Roxanne Marenberg.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 51. Is that a series of emails between yourself and Ms. Marenberg?
Yes, sir, it appears to be.
And what's the date of that email string?
August 23rd, 2008 at
recall at that time posing a hypothetical situation to Ms. Marenberg and requesting an answer to the question whether if an individual receives a telephone call on their cell phone from a residential phone number which has Time Warner Cable, residential telephone calling is located within a residence where no one is present. Call forwarding was not activated on the residential telephone. The individual receiving the telephone call from the residence lives at the residence, but it is not at home at time the call is made to their cell phone. The telephone call is indicated on both the residential phone records and cell phone records.
Yes, sir.
And do you go on to ask other mechanisms by which somebody could possibly do this? Generate a phone call without being home on a landline phone?
Yes, sir. I discussed using a computer and how the computer would store a record could be eliminated, and also discussed the VTech cordless telephone system with the answering machine.
And the VTech is the regular home phone system that was in the house at that time. The individual with whom from whom you received some answers was the gentleman by the name of Paul Geralt, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're aware that Mr. Geralt had had literally written the book on Cisco voice over IP telephony.
No, sir. I'm not aware of that.
You sent photographs of all of the telephones and computer equipment that you took from the house to Cisco.
Yes, sir.
That was so that they could evaluate the equipment to see if it could be made to appear that someone had made a call from the landline home phone to a cell phone.
Yes, sir.
You asked Cisco to check their servers for any call that might have been generated anywhere in the world that might match that 640 telephone call.
Yes, sir.
You're aware that the equipment that Mr. Cooper had in the house, the Cisco equipment, the Cisco routers, the Cisco phone that was part of his office setup, you understand that those items do not have the capability to send a call over a landline.
Objection, Your Honor.
You checked the equipment that you had seized from the Cooper house to see if any of the routers had something called an FXO port, did you not?
Pertaining to the items seized from the house, yes, sir. I'd been asked to check the seized items for an FXO port. I don't have a full understanding of the significance of it. I'd also been asked to check photographs to attempt to locate an FXO port on other items that were not seized but noted in pictures within the Cooper residence, specifically in the attic.
Okay. And at no time did you find any equipment in the home with an FXO port, in photos or in actual search?
The photographs of items that were not seized, it's not clear. I can't make that determination. On the seized items, there was no FXO port.
In the photos where you were unable to make a determination, there was no equipment with an FXO port that you were able to identify as being such.
I couldn't examine those particular items fully in the photographs.
And you had seized Mr. Cooper's cell phone, the Samsung Blackjack, correct?
That was in October 2008, on the 29th.
And you have personally looked through the phone,
No, sir.
the Samsung Blackjack? I mean,
Prior to these proceedings,
about 3 weeks ago?
yes, sir. In these proceedings, I looked through it in your presence and the presence of the district attorney's office.
And in your review, there were no applications on that phone that were related to forwarding calls.
I cannot testify to what anything within that phone could or could not do.
The reason that you were communicating with Cisco and trying to determine whether or not that phone call was placed from the landline at that time was because if at 6:40 Mrs. Cooper called Mr. Cooper on the phone, that meant she was alive at 6:40.
Can you repeat the question?
The reason this is significant to your investigation, the reason why you have spoken with Cisco, the reason why you have tried to check phone records, is because if Mrs. Cooper called Mr. Cooper, if Nancy called Brad at 6:40 in the morning, that means she was alive at 6:40 in the morning, doesn't it?
No, sir, there's no evidence that Nancy would have placed a call at 6:40. That call could have been placed by anyone, if it was even placed by a person.
Well, the question I asked, Detective, is if Nancy called Brad at 6:40 in the morning, if she personally called Brad at 6:40 in the morning, then she's alive at 6:40 in the morning, if that were true.
I don't have any evidence that Nancy was alive at 6:40 in the morning through the course of this investigation.
You do have, throughout your investigation of the telephone call at 6:40 in the morning, you have found nothing, no physical evidence whatsoever tending to show that that was generated through any automated mechanism.
I personally have not, no, sir.